don't have much time before I have to take someone to the surf shop. It's Sunday morning. I'm at Atlantic Beach or Pine Hill Shores, Eastern North Carolina, doing a little bit of cleaning. Now I'm breaking. Just found my scuba mask, which is actually kind of good. This is a good accoutrement for this is how I feel like if you're in public education in North Carolina. I should do the whole video in this thing. This is how teachers feel. And maybe parents, like myself. So you might say, well, I'm not from North Carolina, so this doesn't apply to me. I would tell you it does apply to you because this is a conversation about education in general, but it does relate to North Carolina. But this kind of thing has happened in Ohio and Arizona and states all over the country. So it is applicable. If you have a child with a disability, it's particularly applicable to you. And the last person that it's applicable to is a person that is tired of paying high taxes. Because I think sometimes we think, I'm a Republican because I don't want to pay taxes. And I would say that's me. I am done paying taxes. I hate taxes. I'm interested in a little bit of taxes, but a lot of taxes. But the problem is, in North Carolina, the Republicans have taken a perfectly regular thought, which is nobody wants to pay taxes, to let's waste a ton of money on education in North Carolina. And you're going to be like, what? I thought they were spending less on education. They're spending less on public education. But what they want to do is they want to take your money. So you say, here's my $27,000 in taxes. And they want to give it to rich people. Now, I want taxes. I want taxes. I want to have nice highways. I want to not do that when I drive. I want, what else do I want? I want there not to be trash on the highways. I want normal stuff. If you are a Republican, then you need to ask yourself this question. This is your question. Do I believe in my heart that I should pay for rich people's kids to go to private school? Do I want my tax dollars to do that? Somehow, because that's what's happening with the voucher program, but somehow it's been spun in a way that makes people think, well, my tax dollars should follow me. So if my kids are in private school, I should get the money. That's a separate conversation. That would be called a tax credit. So that's a tax credit. Then let's just call it a tax credit. And that's a different conversation. But a voucher, it's their tax dollars too, Phyllis says. Okay, so Phyllis, I'm going to go with you on this one. We have a CAT bus. You live in a town, you can take the bus. Your tax dollars pay for the bus. Now, I would argue Phyllis has probably never taken the bus. Did the state of Kentucky give you money to buy a car? No, they did not. Because in the Constitution for the state of North Carolina, it is we will provide a free and appropriate public education. It's in our Constitution. So whether or not what you're choosing, you want to buy a car, you don't want to take the bus, you want your kids to go to private school, blah, 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 that's fine. But public education is necessary. North Carolina is the only state in the entire country that has no rules for how you spend money. None. Now, again, you might say, well, I think it's important. I'm going to read you something.
Oh,
What? Why do we have all that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
We're cleaning out. Let me find it. Jennifer, I had sent this to a friend. Okay. So in North Carolina, prepare oneself. This was an article written by Duke Law School, like put out this research study. And so you kind of get to see a neat little chart. This is the chart, and you see states written down, and then North Carolina is at the bottom. And do you see how there's no checks at the bottom? That's because there are no rules regarding where voucher money goes. So years ago, vouchers were created under the guise of helping low-income families access better education. So the rule was you had to be a public school student, right? Because you couldn't say I have a crappy school if I'd never been there. And you had to be low income. You couldn't not be low income because that would not make sense. So here are the rules. Accreditation or state approval. Don't have to be accredited. So Joe Monkey down the street, she is a potato planter. And she says, you know what? I'm going to start a school. And you say, well, that's fine, because you don't have to be accredited or state approved. You don't have to have curriculum. Do you have a water leak on your wall? I'm sure I do. No curriculum. So if you want to teach about McDonald's McCafe, you can talk about coffee. No curriculum is required. Now you might say, well, my child's private school has curriculum. Well, it might, but it doesn't have to. Now I want you to think about what is required in public schools, and we're going to get to that next. The next thing is required teacher qualifications. So your teacher could be my 14-year-old daughter. Yep. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to have a high school degree. You don't have to have nothing. And you might say, well, I don't think that's bad. It might not be bad. But should my tax dollars go to pay teachers that 5 minutes ago were like greeting at Walmart? I'm all for they might be a good teacher. But I work hard for tax dollars. I sit here and do these videos, and I pay 40% to the government. And I'm all for paying for the right things. But do I want to pay for crap? No, it's the same reason I'm not buying my daughter another sweatshirt. She does not need one. Required participation in state testing. So if you know public schools, we test. Amos, my little fellow with autism, he is testing. Yes, Justin Parmenter is wonderful. He is really great. No testing. And the last thing is you don't have to go any number of days or hours. So potato farmer that greeted at Walmart is starting a school. Now she's going to charge $7,500 a child for the school, because that's how much the voucher is now in North Carolina. It was $4,500 for poor people. Now it's $7,500, up to $7,500 for everybody. Now I wouldn't get $7,500. I would only get $3,500. So we're going to hire her. She's going to run the school. Now, Adrian Potato Farmer has to farm. So she's not going to do school. When do you grow potatoes? Is it in the spring or the fall? I think it's in the fall. September, October. It's going to be like Little House on the Prairie out here, or Farmer Boy, Almanzo Wilder. So we ain't having any school, which is fine. But your tax dollars are going to pay for school, right? Plant on Good Friday. Oh, good. Okay. Why would they send their child to a non-accredited school? Why would they if it doesn't make sense? Maybe because they don't want their child in school with black people or with people that have disabilities. Or maybe they have drinked the punch that teachers are trying to indoctrinate their children. Maybe parents aren't the best judges of what is quality. And now this has been proven in research. So years ago, you would have child care programs, and there was no research on childcare, quality childcare programs. And any parent that has used a childcare program can probably say to you, like, boy, I was in a bad childcare program, or boy, we like this one. Well, what they found was that if you asked a parent, how do you like where you send your baby every day? The parent would say, oh, I love it. It's a wonderful place. So then we were like, and the government was like, well, we don't need to do research because all the parents are happy. Okay. Well, let's just do some research for fun. Well, what we found was there's a big difference in quality, and that parents can't admit that something might be crappy, because then it would admit that they're a crappy parent, right? So we did learn about quality, and we know about quality, which is why we require public schools to follow, to me, an extreme list of everything. So Marge Kingsley has been drinking the punch. Get rid of disgusting library books and unisex bathrooms. Marge Kingsley, I would argue, like, have you spent any time in a public school? Because this week I went on a field trip with my son's 3rd grade class. Amos has special needs, and he is in a typical 3rd grade classroom. They rode the bus down to Nag's Head to go to Jeanette's Pier. At Jeanette's Pier, they did a science experiment where they built windmills, and then they tried them in a wind tunnel. They went fishing off the pier, and then they heard a lesson about vertebrates and invertebrates. And then they played in the sand. I stood out in the ocean to make sure nobody got too wet. And then they had lunch on the bus. I saw nothing disgusting. I saw teachers learning. I saw children laughing. I saw a dozen kids that had never seen the ocean or the beach before, and they live an hour away from it. And that's the real deal of public education. So you go on a field trip, Marge, and then you let me know how disgusting everything is. So the newest thing that's super interesting about this is that the state-defined curriculum. So this week, on Thursday, lawmakers in North Carolina want to make it a law that all public school teachers must post their lesson plans online, along with the name of each teacher who used the material in class. So you have voucher money, and you have public school. You have private voucher schools, and you have public schools. The voucher schools, they don't even have to follow a curriculum. And then you have public schools who not only have to test, follow a curriculum, go to school, have accredited teachers, have lesson plans. Now it's all going to be on the internet? I am sorry, but if you think this is normal, you are nuts. Nuts. It's called the Academic Transparency Bill. It was filed on Thursday. So all lesson plans must be online no later than 10 days after the lesson was given. No, the vouchers are annually, Susie, annually. So it's going to do two things. One, it's going to waste a ton of time. And the General Assembly said, well, we're going to give DPI $10,000 to oversee this program. $10,000, which is less than 2 kids get to go to potato farmer school, is going to support thousands of teachers. Why is this reasoning? Well, we have somebody running for governor who is running on the platform of teachers are brainwashing and indoctrinating children, which, again, I would tell you, go spend a day at a public school. Go see what you see. Don't believe that stuff. Like 900 people died in Jonestown because, well, they were murdered. But they ended up there because they listened to a bunch of mess. While teachers are already stretched thin, this bill will take precious time away from student instruction. There were 4 sponsors of this bill: Jake Johnson of Polk County, David Willis of Union County, Hugh Blackwell of Burke County, and my home county, where I grew up, Nash County, Alan Cheshire. So I will be reaching out to Alan Cheshire this week to find out what, if any, experience Alan Cheshire has in public schools. The other thing that's interesting about this is that this is going to give access to all the potato farmers to get a hold of good lesson plans. So suddenly my husband's a criminal defense attorney, and he's going to have to share all his tricks of getting criminals off the hook. Well, you'd be like, well, that's not fair. I don't want to have to do that. Now, the last thing I think that is particularly interesting is the money aspect. So if we're going to talk about money, we are going to say this. Amos, my son, goes to public school. In North Carolina, you get $7,500 per child allotted from the state per child. So you have 1 to 25 students, and the state gives you an amount per kid, no matter where you live. Now, the other part of the money comes from your county, which is why you see such a disparity in education in North Carolina. So if you live in Chapel Hill or Charlotte or Wake County, you're seemingly seeing almost twice, about $12,000 per child, right? So we know that money equates to quality. So when you have more money, you can pay teachers an additional amount. So you might have a teacher that says, well, why do I want to live in Edenton if I can live in Raleigh? And now you might have somebody say, well, why do I want to be a public school teacher when I can teach in a private school? Because they're not going to give me, I'm not going to get paid more for having a master's degree. We're no longer giving teachers benefits when they retire. So before you had health insurance the rest of your life, they've gotten rid of that. And they haven't gotten rid of this to save money. And I'm not like a conspiracy theorist. I don't think they're like Martians coming down to like eat my brains. This is intentional. And I would tell you that probably Alan Cheshire doesn't even understand how it works. He's probably like, damn, I mean, I know they're teaching about that. I saw them talking about those bathrooms. They're in there cutting off people's penises and trying to turn them into women. I mean, I know I'm going to get these people. No, these people, they have no idea. They are just as, unfortunately, ridiculous. The real issue is if we can get less people to go to public school, we can actually save money, right? Because it's cheaper. It used to be cheaper to give somebody a $4,500 voucher instead of spending $7,500 on their education. But what has changed now is that now the voucher amount in the last 6 months has been raised to the full amount given by the state. And you know why this is? Is because enough people weren't using it. And so charter schools used to be the big thing. Now you don't hear anything about charter schools. And do you know why? Because charter schools have to follow at least some of the rules that public schools do, and charter schools have to do testing. Do you know who performs the worst of all the schools in the state? Charter schools. So that's not looking good. So the professionals were like, crap, these charter schools are making us look bad because we're given this flexibility and they suck. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pump our money into vouchers, and we're not going to have any requirements because then there won't be any evidence how shitty they are. But we're going to do it on the thing that parents know best, and we want parents to do what they want to do. Instead of Adrian's tax dollars, $500 million a year in North Carolina to go pay potato farmer. My mind is blown. Not only that, the new rule, so if you're for school choice, you love school choice. School choice is wonderful. I have Amos. So the state of North Carolina gives Amos $7,500 to come into Chowan County. Well, let me just say something, Phyllis, too, about this, is that the state of North Carolina and the federal government have given us money to build a $75 million public high school. I would argue they are wasting your tax dollars, because not only are they pumping all this money into a public high school, they are pumping money into trying to convince people not to go to it. So your town is going to build a community center, right? Your town is like, I am going to build a community center. We want one in our town. It's going to have a pool and pickleball and basketball courts. It's going to have tennis. It's going to have an indoor stadium. It's going to be the most amazing community center. And your tax dollars are going to keep it up. And you're like, I'm pumped. I want a community center. This is awesome. Well, then the government comes in and says, hey, guess what? We are giving money to this group, and they're going to have a YMCA. Now, we're going to give more money to the group with the YMCA. So y'all shouldn't go to the community center. You should go to the YMCA. And you might be like, well, it's my money. I like the YMCA better than the community center. I don't play pickleball. I don't like pickleball. Okay, back up a minute and quit being so narcissistic and think about the fact that now your tax dollars are paying for the community center and a YMCA. Do you want to pay more taxes? Because I don't. So anyway, back to Amos. So Amos gets his $7,500. The federal government, if you have a disability, now you could have, as long as you have an IEP, that counts as a disability. You could be in a wheelchair with a feeding tube on a ventilator, and you get your $4,600, just like somebody that maybe is like Amos, right? He's like in a typical third grade classroom a lot of the day. I mean, he needs help. So you get the same amount of money from the federal government no matter what. So $7,500 plus $4,500 is what? $12,000. Okay, so we got $12,000. Now, I cannot believe only 461 people are watching this. It's like downright and like offensive. If I take Amos and I say, you know what? I want Amos to go to the potato farmer school. I like the potato farmer school. Do you know what the state of North Carolina is going to give me? They're going to give me $17,000. So if I stay, if it's school choice, which it is, okay, it's about my tax dollars, Phyllis, school choice. If you're telling me it's school choice, let's go down that rabbit hole. The state of North Carolina is going to give me $17,000 if I go to potato farmer school. If I stay in my public school, I get $7,500. They're at church. Well, that is true. The school or the parents? Well, so actually the parents, you get the money and you can use it any way you want. So if it's choice, now you don't see people now arguing about this, right? Because I love an argument that you can't argue with. You can't make this make sense. So Phyllis said, they paid to send my son across state lines. Why did he get that, not the other 10 kids just like him? Phyllis, what I would say to you is, if it's about school choice, which in North Carolina it is, it's not really about Amos, then why can't I have my $17,000 and use it at my public school? Tell me that. If it's about school choice, why does the state of North Carolina give me $17,000 to move my son with disabilities to a school that doesn't have a curriculum, doesn't have an attendance policy, doesn't have teachers that have a college degree or licensed, doesn't follow state testing? If it's about choice, then I should get my 17,000 and I should give it to Edenton Chowan schools. Right? But it's not about choice. It's not about choice. It's about dismantling public education. And what you're going to see happen, and what has happened, my husband and I were talking about this morning. Teachers leave. We have 16 teachers that do not have teaching degrees at my daughter's middle school. We can't get teachers because teachers are like, it's not worth it anymore. It's not worth it. And they're leaving. So now we have people who don't have teaching degrees. And so what happens at some point is if enough kids leave public school and they go to potato farmer school, and what you see, research says, is you'll see kind of, one, it doesn't help the rich kids. It gives the rich kids are going to schools that cost $30,000 a year. So that's $7,500 that they're getting, or they get $4,500. That doesn't help poor families go to school, right? It's just a small little like payment. That's probably what they might spend 3 nights in Jackson Hole, right? So we're just funding a portion of their spring break because you're not actually helping children get access to a better school. What you're doing is propping up schools that are probably not that great, and maybe they charge $4,000 a year in tuition. And so now these schools, if they're smart, they're going to be like, I'm going to have a school and I'm going to charge $7,500 because that's what the state of North Carolina is going to see. And you're going to see small schools have a windfall of money to run. So then we're propping up those schools. And so then everybody moves over to those schools except who? Except the people who maybe their parents are gay and they're not allowed to go to the Christian school. Maybe their child has a disability. Maybe the family doesn't have access to a car at 8 in the morning because they need to go on the school bus because they're at work. Who did and funded the research you were referencing? Well, I'm not talking about research, Andrea. What I'm talking about is data that you can look up in North Carolina's laws. You can see exactly how the money works. So this is not research. This is just facts. Like for me, I love the school bus. Amos cannot ride it this year, but it enables me to work an extra hour a day. So there are people that if they're working at Purdue Chicken Plant or they're at another boat factory and they work a 12-hour shift, they can't go to that school because they have to be at work and their child waits at home with the neighbor and they get on the school bus. So then at some point you see, and this has happened, you see school systems and they say, you know what, we're going to have to merge with another school system. So then you see Amos and the kids whose parents can't do it, or maybe the parents didn't get the application in time. And now we're merging school systems. So instead of Edenton Chowan schools, you might have Edenton Chowan Bertie. And you're going to have 2 school systems they're going to merge because we can't afford. And then you're going to have people that don't have jobs. So the teachers need to work to pay to live in Edenton, which is an amazing place. So their families are going to have to move. And at that point, their husband, maybe he works at the hospital. He's an x-ray technician. So now he's leaving the hospital and the teachers are leaving to go somewhere else. Well, then you're going to see the hospital close, which has also happened in communities in North Carolina and around the country. So now there's going to be no public education system and there's going to be no hospital. So those are the 2 biggest employers in my town. Do you know what happens then? Property values tank and there's no place to work. So suddenly, Edenton looks like a shitty ghost town. And nobody lives there. And you drive around Eastern North Carolina and you look at towns that used to exist and no longer do. And you say, is this what I want? Is this what I want? Do I want Eastern North Carolina to survive? Do I want to make sure that children have access to a wonderful education? Because then we know they're 3 times less likely to be in prison. They're twice as likely to finish high school. Like, the research is very clear of what happens when we give someone a good education. It will save us a tremendous amount of money. Nothing I hate worse, other than giving money to the potato farmer, is paying for people to sit in jail. $38,000 a year. Like, if I were in the General Assembly, I would be talking about trying to figure out how not to have people in jail, because I would be like, that is the biggest waste of our tax dollars. Why don't we start private jails? Potato farmer can open up a prison. Well, people be like, no, I don't like that. So anyway, that's all I got. But if you think your vote doesn't matter, or you think that, you know, you should get your money because your kids go to private school, you know, I would argue with you. I have 2 kids in private school right now. And the likely argument, if I were a narcissist, would be that I want that money, right? I want that money. But in truth, I would no more take that money than I would pull out my own toenails and eat them. No, because it is fundamentally wrong. And it's not wrong because I don't want people to have access to, you know, an education. It's wrong because it is your tax dollars. And if you are conservative, fiscally conservative, which I am, you should want to know where your tax dollars are going. Every time I ride by road work and I see a, you know, Barnhill construction truck, I look to see how many people are working. Is anybody being lazy? No. Barnhill Construction, they got the work happening. They're doing great. And I think, that's good. That's my tax dollars, right? But if I ride by Potato Farmer School and they're there 2 days a week for 3 months and nobody's got a teaching license and they're out there digging potatoes and we're paying them $17,000, where my public school for Amos is getting $7,500, and his teachers are working their asses off. As a conservative, as a fiscally conservative person, I should say that is a waste of money. That voucher is a waste of money. Why are we giving money to this crap? I am fiscally conservative. I want to know where my $7,500 is going. Damn it. Chew on that.